I'm not sure I know what compassion is. I mean, I looked up the definition, so I'm not unaware of it. It's sympathetic pity and concern for the sufferings or misfortunes of others, in case you were wondering. And I think, given that meaning, that I have and do show compassion in my life fairly often, really. But I think that's, we need to go a little deeper than that, right? In my mind, compassion is inextricably linked to forgiveness, which is why our reading today focused on forgiveness. And I liked that reading because it shows you don't need to forgive everyone, especially people who have or are continuing to wrong you. There are situations in which compassion and forgiveness works. There are situations in which it doesn't. I do know that I would like to show more compassion in my life. I'm fairly sure that our world could use more compassion. And related to that, I believe there is a massive deficit of compassion in our country right now, for instance. So, if that's where we are in compassion, how do I build it within myself? How do I find more of it to share in our world? How do I encourage others to do the same? Well, let's start with sometimes that's pretty easy. When your friend is in trouble or your neighbor is in need, often compassion comes quite easily. And we also know that compassion isn't just for the easy times, for when we have someone who is already sympathetic to us, and we are sympathetic to them, when there's someone we like or would like if we were to know more about them, we would like them. It's not just for when the compassion comes easily. I've been thinking a lot about compassion for people whom I don't know at all, or worse, who I do know something about and dislike, or who disgust me even, or who have spent, it seems like, their entire lives doing awful things. At least all of the things I know about them are awful. In short, do I have to feel compassion for, say, the Charlie Kirks of the world? Or all those other people whose views I find abhorrent? Well, I felt a little overwhelmed by this question. So I went to one of the smartest and most compassionate people I know, my wife, who generously shared with me a sermon she gave about this not too long ago. I'm going to read from you an excerpt from it. She said, "The hardest part is the inner work we must do to find humility and compassion for ourselves and for others, not for their beliefs. I'm not suggesting we work on finding compassion for the idea that anyone deserves to suffer, or that some people are less important than others. Nothing like that. But I'm not sure how to continue growing as a kind, open, loving person without finding compassion for the living, breathing people who do believe these things. We live in a time when extremism of all kinds is growing. And as the climate crisis on this planet intensifies, the threat of extremism will only grow. But our call as religious liberals is not to create a haven for people who think and believe all the same things we do. Our call is to work for our values in our community, both through advocacy at the local, state, and national levels, but also through our personal relationships with our neighbors." So ends her words. And my personal feeling about compassion and for whom we feel it is do what you can. It's not your job, not my job, to personally convince the top leaders of our country right now how wrong they are. We can try, I'm just not certain we'll be successful. But I do think it's our role to say, talk to our neighbors. It's our role to feel compassion and empathy for those suffering in our communities and to help in the ways we can, as we do so often in this congregation, through our support of each other and our work in the larger community. And as part of that role, we have to learn to feel compassion at some level for people who suffer from the bad consequences of their own mistakes. And I really struggle with this one, I'm going to tell you. I would like to feel righteously angry, and I told you so. The truth is that that's not helpful. It may make me feel better for an instant, but it's not going to make our world a better place. But why should I feel bad for someone who should have known how badly their decision was going to turn out? How do I feel badly for the farmer I saw on TikTok who supported candidates whose policies are now hurting his own livelihood? How do I have compassion for voters who, again, voted for candidates whose policies are now leading to the deportation of those voters' own family members and friends, or even themselves? I'm working on those. How do I have compassion for that? And part of the answer is that I do my best. And like in our reading, I think of things I have believed myself that turned out to be wrong. I'm not wrong very much, right? But once in a while it happens. Or decisions I made that seemed perfectly good at the time and turned out very badly. I have wanted, I continue to want, to have people in my life who would want to help me do better in those moments and recover from those bad decisions and become a better person. And I think that's a reasonable goal for all of us. We can work to cultivate compassion even with those whom we disagree. We can work and have hope that people can change and grow, including ourselves. And we can acknowledge that we disagree, that we may never agree, but still we want the very best for our fellow humans. And if that's more than you or I can manage in this moment, well, again, we do our best. Indeed, from our readings today and from the world, there's a well-known idea that I'm only going to touch on today because it's its own sermon, but the idea that having compassion and its sibling forgiveness is often as much about ourselves as it is the person with whom we are concerned. Desmond Tutu put it this way: forgiveness does not relieve someone of responsibility for what they have done. Forgiveness does not erase accountability. We are not responsible for what breaks us, but we can be responsible for what puts us back together again. My compassion or my forgiveness may not change someone else, but it changes me for the better. So as we work to cultivate compassion in our lives, it's okay to start with the easy kind. Help those you know and love who are in need. But try to push yourself. Move in circles outward to those for whom it is harder for us to feel compassion. And in doing so, we can seek the support of community here and other supportive places for you. In this congregation, we continue to lift up our highest values, including that of love, from which compassion flows. We work to be in relationship with others so that we can cultivate that compassion and with it build a better world, today and tomorrow and as long as we can. In that spirit, I want to finish the sermon today with a blessing written by Kate Steinberg called "We Lay Down Our Burdens." Beloved companions, we come to this place where all we have to do is breathe. We don't have to impress or convince or win over. We don't have to know the right words. It's okay if we didn't read the book or pass that class or carry that title or meet that mark. We don't have to be anything but who we are. Here we rest in essence together. And to move into this communal rest, we lay down our burdens, our longing, our craving, our unmet need, our error, our regret, our sudden disappointment, our anxiety, our shame, our sheer exhaustion, our bewilderment, our bafflement, our burgeoning terror. All of this we lay down together today, so that as we do this, may we be filled instead with presence. May we feel held in the comfort of our community. May we discover new compassion for ourselves and others. May we meet this moment with gentleness, ease, and gratitude. For this air we breathe together, for these questions we ask together, for the justice we seek together, and for the songs we sing together. May it be so.